What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast. Today's a guest episode. Got a really special guest in Johnny Pemberton. You might know him as Bo from Superstore or a number of other places he's touring as a stand-up comedian. Got him on the show today. He's actually a diehard Vikings fan that joined the fandom a couple of years ago. So that's an interesting perspective. Let's talk to him about it here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Ooh-wee!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at LukeBraunNFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. And today on the show, we're going to talk to Johnny Pemberton. I recorded this interview earlier today, so it was a really fun conversation. I found out in the middle of the interview that he started being a Vikings fan 2 years ago. So he only knows the 2020 and 2021 Vikings. He does not know a Vikings team that made the playoffs. He grew up in Minnesota. He went to a couple Vikings games as a kid. But he, as a fan, he doesn't know the Vikings except for the super uber frustrating Vikings of a couple years ago, which is a fascinating perspective for a fan, a fascinating place for a fan to join. And honest to God, he has some good takes. Look, we hear a lot of Vikings analysis, and his analysis as a guy who is very new to the sport is better than he's got better takes than I've had on a lot of episodes of this show. And I'm super excited to share that with you. But first things first, let's talk a little bit. So I haven't talked at all about the combine. It's been all week. I'm talking about what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell have said. They've all kind of said what we expect them to, but the drills are now starting, and we're starting to learn what people are scoring and stuff like that. Risers, fallers, all that stuff. Go listen to the Locked On NFL Draft podcast for all of that. But what I can say is there's a ton of wide receivers with blistering speed. There were 9 people who ran sub 4.3, which is insane. That's just superhuman stuff to do, and to have that many people capable of doing it is absolutely wild. So it kind of gets me wondering about man, what's in a 40 time? Because we've seen a lot of 40 time gods kind of go by the wayside. We're familiar with the most famous one of all in Troy Williamson, who ran a crazy 40 time, couldn't catch the ball, never worked. But there's John Rosses out there. There's Kevin Williamses out there. There's all sorts of guys out there that totally destroyed the combine, didn't turn into a good player. And so what I want to talk about real quick before we get into the Johnny Pemberton stuff, I want to talk real quick about how do we take what we learned this weekend and turn it into something that is actually useful to evaluating players? Because I don't know if the Vikings are going to draft a wide receiver number 1 overall. Or number 1 in the first round. I think it would be defensible to do that, even though they have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and I guess KJ Osborne and whatever. The Chiefs have 4 good wide receivers. The Rams have 4 good wide receivers across the board. That's not unreasonable to have 4 wide receivers that you've invested reasonable capital into, or that you feel good about. Just because they have Jefferson, Thielen, KJ Osborne doesn't mean that wide receiver is not a thing that they can reasonably draft high. So there's that, right? And do they need a bunch of speed? Not really. Adam Thielen's speed, I will maintain is fine. Justin Jefferson's speed is very good, and I think KJ Osborne's is fine. So they don't have a slow group, but I don't think a deep burner would hurt. So these fast 40 time guys are great. I've been on record before saying they kind of I would love to see them grab a quick wide receiver, not necessarily a fast one, but somebody with a really good 3-cone time, some really agile Scotty Miller type. I think that would work really well in the McVay-esque scheme that Kevin O'Connell ostensibly will install. That's not all that different from what they did under the Kubiak and Kubiak adjacent people like Stefanski and Clint Kubiak. And somebody for that slot receiver role that's very quick and very agile and very good. It has a lot of burst and change of direction. But that kind of brings me to the crux of the discussion, which is about like the 40 time. How much does this matter? Like, how excited should you really get about a dude that ran a 4.21? That's an insane speed. But I don't know if that guy can run a route. Like, maybe he can. I've never looked into the guy, so I have no idea if that guy can run a route. So I don't know how excited I can get about him. And that's fine. And I'll go look into that later, and I'll come up with a real opinion. But my opinion will be predicated on if that guy can run a route. And if he can run a route, and then he has that crazy 40, awesome. If he can't run a route, and all he has is a crazy 40, I don't really care. So there is a discussion to be had about how much do we care about the wide receiver 40. I find myself caring very little about it. Not because like a fast receiver is great. But if you have a fast receiver, you probably already knew that about him. Like if you're in a team scouting and stuff, and Chris Olave runs a 4.26, which is something that happened, you knew that about him already. You knew he was. I think he ran faster than he was supposed to, so his stock might move up the board. It might move him a couple spots up the board, and that's fine. But you knew he was already going to be a good athlete, and testing it confirms that, and that's what we're here for. But how, like, does it really change your opinion? And so I am of my take on the combine in general is that it confirms your opinion. It doesn't make your opinion. It shouldn't make your opinion. If you're making your opinion off of the combine, you're doing things wrong. But it should confirm or deny your opinion. It should be another piece of data, another piece of information that you look for and say, this either confirms or denies what I already thought. And if it doesn't do that, if you thought the dude was like going to be a great receiver and then he totally bombs the combine, there's a question to be had there. Even if it's something like, he was just hungover, you look at a situation like that and ask, okay, how seriously does he take all this? Or if it's, he didn't train for the blocks right. That's something that bothers me a ton about these 40-yard dashes is it's sprinter technique, and sprinter technique has no place on an NFL field. You can't use sprinter technique to get separation against a cornerback. So if somebody turned out to be really good at sprinter technique and it made their 40 time better, does that necessarily mean they're a better player? They're a faster player. And that kind of brings me to mention that like all these teams have chip tracking data, next gen stats, Zebra Technologies data from college teams that said, well, here we put a chip in the shoulder pad. You can just see how fast this dude ran on actual routes. And you can compare that to NFL equivalents and see like how that works. And you don't really have to care about the 40 after that. So it's a little bit archaic. If you're super excited and you're like, man, that dude ran a 4.24 and that's really exciting. Like, if you're just jazzed on that because it's fun and it's cool, far be it from me to get in your way. But otherwise, I caution you, don't get too wrapped up in the 40 time. So all of that said, let's talk to a fun guy. Johnny Pemberton. Again, comedian, Vikings fan, TV star, TV character? I don't know. We'll talk to Johnny Pemberton. That's coming up in just a second. But first, let me talk to you about a good old gamble. Did you know that at betonline.net, the 2022 NFL MVP favorite is Josh Allen? That's kind of wild. And if you see somebody like Aaron Rodgers winning a third in a row, or somebody like Joe Burrow winning it, maybe Justin Herbert, you can get those odds crazy right now. If you have somebody you're super, super hyped on, you can get those odds crazy, crazy high right now. So head on over to betonline.net. You can bet on futures like that. You can also bet on stuff like basketball, hockey, baseball if they ever play a game again. You can bet on tennis and golf and MMA and whatever you want. They have a player prop builder where you can put together your crazy parlays that I know y'all like to do. You can bet on games live. You can just like second quarter, I think the team's going to come back. You can bet on that with their live betting apparatus. Whatever you want, head on over to betonline.net where the game starts. All right, everybody, I'm here with a very special guest, Johnny Pemberton, everyman and dignitary and comedian. What's up, Johnny?
Hey, what's up? Nice to be here. I am a dignitary first. I'm glad you said that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have led with that.
Yeah.
We can take it again?
No, it's great. The fact that you got in the first couple of words is all I need. Dignitary.
Okay, great. So, Johnny, before we get going, what do you have coming up that people should be on the lookout for if they want to see stuff with you in it?
I'm doing a bunch of live comedy shows coming up. I'll be in the Midwest and the South. If you go to johnnypemberton.dog, that is my website, johnnypemberton.dog. You can see the dates and all the ticket links and stuff are there. So, yeah, check it out.
So it was brought to my attention a couple weeks ago. Shout out to Bob Netherlands on Twitter that you are a lifelong Vikings fan. Tell me what sorts of horrors led to that. Whose mistake? Who do we blame? Not lifelong?
Lifelong is not true. No, I'm not a lifelong Vikings fan. Technically, I don't know. Lifelong. Yeah, I know.
You chose this.
I have been to games as a little kid. Probably been about 4 or 5 games as a little kid. The main part of those games being number 1, having nachos. Number 2, throwing paper airplanes from the upper deck. And number 3, getting to be blown out of the Metrodome by the wind when they have those doors open. Oh, yeah. So that was, for me, that was my introduction to Vikings.
And that sort of experience will hook, any child.
Yeah, definitely. But what happened actually was this thing called the pandemic started, and I couldn't do any of the things I normally wanted to do. So I decided I'll buy NFL Sunday ticket and get into football. This was probably fall of 2020. And I was like, what team am I going to root for? I guess it'll be the Vikings. And that's how it started again.
So you joined the Vikings for just the last 2 seasons. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I know, but I like it. I feel like as much as they've had some serious problems and it's incredibly frustrating, I think in a weird way, it's the best team to root for because, they're a classic team, right? They're one of the original teams in the NFL. They have a distinctive look.
The
purple,
for sure.
And there's it's a cool thing. And also, I feel like the fact that they are always almost good, it really helps you manage your expectations in life. It's the kind of thing
that's true of every Minnesotan.
Because it's one thing if you're like a Lions fan, you just expect. Remember how the Lions were crying when they beat the Vikings? It was such a big deal, even though they still have an absolutely terrible record, the worst in the NFL. It was still a thing where they were just so happy to win a game. But the Vikings aren't that. They're right in the middle where there's no gratitude and there's no celebration. It's just this. Yeah. It's a hell. It's pure hell. And you just have to live with it.
And learning it teaches you how to live with things that disappoint you. Right. And every Minnesotan will tell you that that's a good life skill. You'd be like, oh, it's going to warm up in March. It sure is this year. And then you get disappointed, but you know how to deal with that.
Exactly. Yep. That's my thoughts on Vikings fandom.
Now, tell me, did you grow up in Minnesota, and that's why you ended up going to Vikings games? Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in Minnesota. I grew up. I left when I was 18, so I guess it's where I grew up, Minnesota.
Great. And so those games you went to as a kid, do you remember what they were, or when about, or what your first experience with the Vikings was?
It was just a long time ago. I was probably 10 or 11 or something like that. I don't really remember exactly that much about it. I just remember it was fun to go and get snacks and watch the game. I didn't really know much about football. So yeah, it's just really, I probably shouldn't have been there. And I think I even went with my friend's dad. And I think a couple times he was mad at us because we were just totally not watching the game at all.
That's an extremely dad move.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about current Vikings then. So you've been into the team for a couple of years. Let's start with the obvious question. Which side of the Kirk Cousins war do you fall on? What's your Kirk Cousins opinion?
Oh, my Kirk Cousins opinion is tough because I feel like every time you just are expecting him to just totally be terrible, he pulls something off. But then there's other times where you're just this is so, all you had to do was so simple. It was the simplest thing. I remember being
just line up under the center.
Yeah, that right there. That I didn't even know what happened there. I was like, what happened? I had to look up. I had to Google it to see what had happened. And the fact that he did that, yeah, man. Cousins. The worst thing about Cousins is his numbers are so good. I think they should fix that somehow because it's wrong. Everyone quotes his numbers like, oh, he's got great this, great that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. The only number that matters is how much he costs. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, I feel like the Vikings. I feel like the Vikings themselves might agree with you because they're trying to get that number down, but that's a whole negotiation that they're going through right now. So if you were in charge, would you extend him to get the cap number down so he's cheaper, or would you just trade him, just be done with him?
I don't know. It's tough because he's kind of got like a little bit of a rapport with Jefferson. He's got some people he goes to. I remember that one game when Dalvin was out, right? Or maybe it was 2 games. The first game that Dalvin was out,
it was a few.
This season. Yeah, I think he was out a couple games. He was out for COVID the last part of the season. He was injured. The injury, I can't remember what game it was, but the next game we played without Dalvin, Cousins did great. I think it was because he couldn't lean on Dalvin to go to him, so he was playing different. He changed his play style, and so to me, it's like, I don't know. It's like that thing where how do you make someone change willingly and not force them to change? I think Cousins has a problem going outside of his comfort zone, and that's his weakness. Is he just refuses? They always do those sideline passes and stuff, and it's just like all this really dumb shit where they're not being creative. And so I think there's a solution, but I don't know. Maybe it's Zimmer. Maybe the lack of Zimmer and the new guy, I can't remember his name, but maybe he'll change everything. So I think probably one more season with Cousins. If he doesn't change under this new coaching, then he's got to go.
Yeah, if you can swing a contract that makes it work that way, then that might actually be the path the Vikings end up picking. Johnny, I want to keep talking to you. So yeah, stick around. Real quick, let me talk to you about the best tasting protein bar on the planet. It is Built Bar, covered in 100% chocolate. Look, sometimes you wake up, you got a late night craving, you want something chocolatey. That doesn't fit into your diet. That would totally knock you off the wagon. Now with Built Bar, no, it's got 130 calories in it. You can totally fit that thing in. It's covered in delicious chocolate. It comes in a bunch of delicious flavors like chocolate caramel, chocolate orange, chocolate cherry, cookies and cream, mint, double chocolate brownie, all sorts of delicious stuff. Plus, they got their Built Puff, which rules. It's like a marshmallowy one. I have no idea how they do this while only keeping it like 4 grams of sugar, 130 calories, 17 grams of protein, some magic with collagen protein. It is so good. So head on over to built.com and grab a box for yourself. You can enter promo code LOCKEDON, promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15. You can get 15% off of your next order. That's promo code LOCKED15, all one word, for 15% off of your order at built.com. All right, continuing on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Very special guest, Johnny Pemberton, funny man extraordinaire. We're talking Vikings. I was going to ask you about like what you think of the new head coach, but you couldn't remember his name.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
That kind of tells me something. It's Kevin O'Connell.
I think he's
generic.
He's going to be great because he was the offensive coordinator for the Niners, or who was he for
the Rams under McVay?
The Rams, yeah, and so they did great. So maybe
they won the Super Bowl.
God, hopefully they can do it. Hopefully he'll be the thing. Because that's the thing I always say.
You hope he's like the young guy.
Yeah, just to inspire people to just go the extra distance or just really be more creative. That's what I think is the big problem with the Vikings is a lack of creativity. There's just something that's just not happening.
You nailed it. I think you nailed it. I think there is
because they've got the weapons.
Yeah, go on.
Got the weapons. You got Dalvin, you got Jefferson, you got Thielen, you got all these great players, and we got great defensive line, a better defensive line than 2020. All they have to do is boost the defensive line up a little bit more and just get those guys starting to do some more creative stuff on the offense, because that's where they were lacking. Someone told me this was like, because I've been learning about football the past few years.
Sure.
Someone told me that the big problem with the Vikings is that they never set the tone. They always match the other team they're playing. That's why there's always such close scores. And after thinking about that, every time I watch a game, I'm like, you're right. They're just sort of playing to the team they're playing. They're not going above that.
The mark of an inconsistent team. I am so tickled that you've only seen 2020 and 2021 because those are probably two of the funniest Viking seasons I can remember. There are scandals abound and weird stuff, and then the vaccine thing, and then Cousins lining up on the Jacksonville game a couple of years ago was the funniest game like ever. It's like up there with the old Love Boat seasons. I don't know how up you are on like the history of the old, the Wizinator and all that stuff. Everybody knows the Love Boat. So what's the funniest thing that you like? What's your favorite funny thing? Like, let's reminisce about the funny stuff that happened here. What's the funniest thing that has happened to the Vikings since you joined the bandwagon?
God, I feel like nothing funny has happened with the Vikings. I mean, it's like crying with your buddy. It's like you're being in jail and you're laughing that you're in jail with your buddies because of something you did. That's what I feel like the Vikings is. We're all stuck here. Like, well, hopefully someone posts bail soon, but we're going to just have fun here in jail while we're stuck. I think the funniest thing about the Vikings is how many times they've blown leads. That to me is hilarious. That and the fact they fucking beat the Packers all the time. They beat the Packers.
That is hilarious because the Packers cannot cope with it.
Yeah.
Like, they're so upset.
There's nothing I love more than an upset cheesehead, man.
Absolutely. I talked to Peter Bukowski, who does the Locked On Packers podcast.
Okay.
And their whole deal about like the Vikings, well, that's your Super Bowl when we beat the Packers, and we were all excited. Like, our kicker made a kick for once, and they're like, that's your Super Bowl. Enjoy yours. We're going to the playoffs, and they go one and done. And also, like, I just co-opted that, and I'm like, well, how many Super Bowls have you won this year? Because we won ours.
Yeah, seeing the Packers lose was one of the greatest days in the past year.
That's good. Yeah, that's
so good.
That is integral to being a Vikings fan, is wishing ill upon the Packers. But what we don't wish ill upon the Bears enough. Like, there's a lot of Packers hate out there, and a lot of people are like fine with them. We got to hate the Bears just as much. The Lions, whatever, but we got to hate the Bears just as much.
I think the Bears, that first Bears game this year, there was a lot of hate. You could feel it. It felt, because those Chicago fans, man, Chicago fans are the worst. They're such bastards. They get so pissed about everything. They're like the worst behaved fans. I'd say they're up there with the worst behaved fans. One of my best friends is a actual lifelong Bears fan. So I would say that to his face. He would admit that. Because people from Chicago, they're just the worst. They're so mean.
Chicagoans in general.
Yeah, they just have this. Well, I don't know about Chicagoans, but definitely the Bears fans. They're just drunk, unruly. They're just assholes about everything. The way they cheer for stuff is just it feels good to beat them.
It does. It feels unearned. I was actually at Soldier for that game. And it was the first time I'd ever been to Soldier. It's so
cool.
dinky. It's old. Like, I've been to Lambeau too. Lambeau feels old, but in like a dignified way, where it's like, there's all this history here, and you kind of feel like you're walking through the halls of those who walked before. Soldier just feels like, man, they got to do something about this. Like, they come out, if you watch the way the Vikings come out, like the pregame intro, and you see them all come out, they've got that big dragon blowing smoke, and they're running out, and the lights go off, and there's fireworks, and there's pyrotechnics. And the Bears, they bring out a couple, it looks like they just bring out like blocking dummies, like what they'd practice with. And then they just kind of jog out, and then they play like an old trumpet thing that they recorded back in like 1954. And like, that's kind of it. And it's like, that's all you can muster. And like, I've never seen a fan base lulled to sleep on a Monday night game. Everybody's supposed to be drunk and unruly. They were like,
man,
we don't really care anymore.
They're so disappointed. They've given up on any chance of. Well, I will say the Bears did get a lot of really bad calls. Like, they suffered that Cowboys game. There was some. I say all this stuff about the Bears, but really, I think I root for them when they're playing other teams, just because I think they're fun to watch, and they really got screwed over so hard by the officials. A couple times, it honestly felt like the fix was in.
Maybe Maybe everybody's plotting against Justin Fields so that
Yeah.
we can all make enough excuses and not figure out that he's actually just bad.
Yeah, I think he's terrible. Poor guy.
Get him.
He's also 6'3".
Once again,
He seems like he's 5'9".
Wait, what?
Yeah, Justin Fields is 6'3". I just looked it up the other day. I couldn't believe it.
That's insane. I do not
He
believe
so short,
that.
right? Doesn't he?
Yeah, he plays
I'm pretty sure
short.
I'm right
He plays
about
like a
that.
short quarterback.
He plays like Russell Wilson with one leg.
Oh my God. Yeah, and then can't throw.
Yeah.
He could throw in college. I don't know. They're ruining him over there. Another reason I
really
hate the
are.
Bears, because I liked him a lot in college.
They think he's gonna build though. They really are. I mean, they're betting on it basically that he's gonna build, but who knows?
Yeah.
Or grow, whatever you say. Yeah.
Yeah, develop. Once again, tell the people where they can find you, your tour dates, all that stuff.
You just Google my name and you'll find it. But if you really want to go to it directly, it's johnnypemberton.dog. That is my real website.
All right, great. Johnny, thank you so much. Have a good one, man.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so here's what I want to do, because Johnny is a new Vikings fan. I want to welcome him into Vikings Twitter. And I didn't ask him, but I don't think he knows about stuff like Randy Moss's Thanksgiving game and the Anthony Carter 1987 game against the 49ers. All of these really happy Vikings memories that are going to hook him as a fan. So here's what I want you to do. You can find at Johnny Pemberton. I want you to tag at Johnny Pemberton, and if you can, also tag at Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings so I can see it, and send him your favorite Vikings moment. Send him happy memories of the Vikings. The miracle, the time they shellacked the Cowboys at home in the playoffs, if there's been a few of those, but the time like the Brett Favre one where they won 34-3, but the 1987 game, playoffs wins from the 70s if you're older. Send him fun things from send him your favorite moment as a Vikings fan. Get this dude hooked. And I'm not going to do anything with it, but I would just absolutely love it if you tagged me in it as well at Luke Braun NFL or at Locked On Vikings. Let's get Johnny Pemberton hooked on the Minnesota Vikings. I will see you all next week. In the meantime, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast. Probably all sorts of good combine analysis going on there. So check that out. Go listen to that. Listen to the Locked On Vikings podcast. First listen every day. I will see you all on Monday with the next episode. And as always, Skol.